Hello there, welcome to Cansanity. Today we're going to be making a French Canadian traditional Christmas tourtiere. And I am very lucky because I have a very good friend that is French Canadian and she taught me her family's recipe. So let's get started. Okay, so I'm just going to tell you about the ingredients that are in this recipe. Now I like to make my own pie crust, and on the website cansanity.com there's my favorite pie crust. It's called Busy Life Pie Crust. It's my fail-safe. I use it to make meat pies, sweet pies, butter tarts, you name it. And so if you haven't tried it already, go to the website and take a look at it, because once you try it, honestly, you'll probably not use any other pie crust. Now, if you don't want to make your own pie crust, that's fine. Then you can buy the pie crust and then just make the meat filling. Now, I have done a video on how to make the pie crust, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time in this video showing you how to make pie crust. I'll just go through it pretty quickly. But we'll concentrate on how to make this delicious meat filling. So for the pie crust, you're just going to need flour, and I like to get my flour locally and from my favorite flour mill. And you're going to need some lard. I like to use lard in my pie crust, and an egg, and you're going to need some baking powder, salt, and vinegar. And then for the filling, for the delicious meat pie filling, you're going to need pork, and ground pork in this particular recipe is the main meat, and beef, and then the spices which make this pie so amazing are nutmeg, clove, and celery salt, and then some salt and pepper. And now you are going to cut up some onion and mince some garlic as well. So that's it. That's the overview of the ingredients. So now let's get started. Okay, so I've already measured out 5 cups of all-purpose flour, and just for demonstration, make sure that when you measure that you take your cup and you level it so that it's this is 5 level cups of flour. So that's my 5 cups of flour, and then you're going to add in some baking powder, and so you're going to add 2 teaspoons of baking powder, and I'm just going to do it here. It's 1, 2, and then you're going to add in a teaspoon of salt. And then you can mix that up. And now I add in my 1 pound of lard. And now you can use knives to first cut it out. Or if you don't have a pastry cutter, then you can just cut in your lard with knives. I usually just get it started. And then I move to using my pastry cutter. So cut that up. Okay, so that's good enough. There's some bigger pieces in there, but as long as they're about the size of a pea in there, then that's good. So now you want to add your liquid. So I've already measured in 2 teaspoons of vinegar into this measuring cup, and I've already whisked up 1 whole egg, and I'm just going to pour that into my measuring cup and whisk that up. And now I'm going to add in my ice cold water up to 1 cup. And then I'll just give that a whisk. And then pour that in there. And I'm going to mix this up and then divide this dough into 8 dough balls. Okay, so you can see that it's coming together nicely. And you don't want to handle this too much because you don't want the lard to melt in your hands, and your hands are warm. So just try to put it together into, knead it just a little bit to put it together into a ball. And then now I'll just form this into 8. Okay, so my dough balls are formed, and I have 4 in this glass bowl. And when I make this tourtiere for Christmas, I like to make mini versions. So I have 4 pastry dough balls because I'm going to need a little bit more than just 2 shells. But if you're going to make 1 large pie, then you're just going to need 2 shells. And so what I like to do is I put a lid on it, and this is just one of those lids that stick to the bowl, and so it's a nice reusable lid. And I'm going to put that in my fridge so that that pastry firms up a little bit, and that will just make it better for rolling. And for the remaining pastry dough balls, what I did was I wrapped them in wax paper. I'll put that in a container that I'm going to then pop into my freezer, and I'll use these at a later date. And so now we can move on to the meat filling. Okay, so I have my pot on the stovetop, and I'm just going to put in 1 1/4 pound of ground pork and 1/4 pound of ground beef. I'm going to saute this, or brown it. You don't need to add any oil to the pan because pork has a lot of fat in it, or the beef and the pork will have some fat in it. And so if you want to, you can add a little bit of olive oil, but I don't usually bother. We're just going to let that cook up and brown. Okay, so while the meat is browning on medium, I am going to just cut up my onion. And the recipe on the website has you putting in 1 medium onion. These are fairly small, so I'll use up most of this. And so I like the onion to be very small, fine in this, not too chunky. And so I'll cut my onion this way, and then I'll just, and that way you just have a much smaller dice. If you don't mind your onions being chunky, then you can certainly cut them up differently, but this is how I like to cut it up, so that I think I'll only do 1 1/2 of the smaller onions. That should give me about a medium, enough for about a medium onion. Okay, so you can see that the meat is browned and cooked, and it doesn't have to be cooked completely all the way through because you are going to cook it in the oven as well, but you do this step so that you can drain off the fat. And so you can see there's quite a bit of fat in there, and you don't want that in your pie. So I'm going to take that off the stove now and drain off the fat. Okay, so just draining off the fat off my meat. So now I'm just going to add to my hot pot the onion. I'm going to saute that for a while. You can leave a little bit of that fat in there. I kind of drained it all off, but just a little bit, like a teaspoon would be fine. might even add just a splash of olive oil. I'm just going to add just a splash of oil just so that doesn't stick. Okay, so I'm going to add my garlic in there too. And you really only need to saute this for 1 minute altogether, but I usually get the onion started and then I add the garlic in and just cook that for 30 seconds. Okay, so now you just want to waken up your spice. So you just add a teaspoon of nutmeg. Half a teaspoon of celery salt and a half a teaspoon of cloves. And then just for a couple seconds, just warm those spices up, just to activate them again. Okay. Now you can add your meat back to your pot. Oh, the smell is just amazing. And now you're going to add some water, about a half a cup, or 2/3 of a cup. You want basically the water to cover the meat. A little bit more here. You're going to now simmer that. That's pretty close. You don't want to have too much water. Let's see how you can just see that now. If you just press down, that's perfect. Okay, and now you're going to just simmer that. Okay, so this has been simmering for 10 minutes and I need to simmer it for another 20. And as you can see, it's coming along nicely. It smells amazing. And so we'll just keep simmering that for another 20 minutes. Okay, so now I still have 15 minutes left on my timer for simmering, but I'm going to add some salt now. This is a half a teaspoon. I don't like my meat to be overly salty, so that's all I'm going to add. You can add up to a teaspoon, but this is to taste. So I'll start with a half a teaspoon. Once it's finished, I'll take a little taste and see if I need to add some more. I don't list that you put pepper in this recipe, but you can add a little bit of pepper if you like. I'll just add a pinch. And we'll just continue to simmer. Okay, so this is what it's going to look like when it is done, and you can see that there's still a good amount of liquid. You're going to need to divide that up in between all your little pies if you make small pies, or you're going to want that juice in your large pie. So that looks perfect, and so we'll move on to making rolling out the pie crust. Okay, so the meat filling is done, and so I'm preheating my oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm preheating it to 400 degrees Fahrenheit because I am actually making small versions of this pie. If you're going to make one large pie, 9-inch pie, then preheat your oven to 450 because you'll cook it for 10 minutes high and then you'll drop the temperature down for the remaining part of the cooking. But because I'm going to make smaller pies, I'm just going to cook it at 400 degrees Fahrenheit. So now I like to use these tinfoil tins when I want to have these pies made so that they're nice and convenient. And so I plan on cooling these completely, then freezing them, and then just reheating them on Christmas Eve, and the work is done. I don't have to bother with making the pies that day. And now you could also use a pan like this and just spray it before you put your pie crust in. Just it'll make it easier to pop the pie crust out. And then once this is cool, once the pies are cool in the pan, you can take them out and cool them for the rest of the cooling on a baking tray. But because I want it to be convenient on Christmas Eve, I'm going to use these. So I'm ready now to start rolling out the pie crust. Okay, so I've rolled out one of the dough balls, and you can see that I rolled it more like an oval rather than a circular, because I'm going to get 2 crusts out of the this dough ball. So I'm just going to use this bowl that I have to cut my bottom crust, and I just run a knife around it, sharp knife, just to make sure that it's cut all the way through. And then just take that off, and I'll just do another one here. And then just take your tin. And you see that's a thicker crust. You kind of want to have a thicker bottom crust for this pie. And so then going to put that in there. And now I don't worry about making this edge really fancy on these pies, because you'll see how I put the top on. It'll be fancy enough. So I just cut it so that the dough just comes up to the rim. I don't worry about fluting the edge of the crust. Okay, now I'll roll out my tops before I fill my pies, my tins up. Now this is just the scraps of what was left over from cutting the 6 bottoms of the pies for the bottom of the pie, and I just pushed it all together so I can use that for the tops. And then this is my last dough ball that I have out of my 4. So now I'm going to also roll this in more of a oval shape, because I want to get 3 tops out of this. And I have a bowl here that I'm going to use that is obviously smaller than my bottom crust bowl. And so you just roll that till you can get 3. And it looks like I have that. Yeah. So again, it's okay that this crust is a little thicker than what you would do for a fruit pie. And then I'm going to cut those out. For the top, I'm going to use a little decoration in the center, and that will be my vent. So you can do a snowflake, or a little Christmas tree, or even a star. I have to roll out the pastry for the additional 3 tops. Okay, so now we're going to fill our pies. So start with a good spoonful and just distribute them evenly. Leave the liquid in the pot for now. You'll distribute that evenly between the pies at the end. Okay, so I don't have a lot of liquid left because it actually came up in the spoons as I was dishing them out. So it looks like it needs to go a little bit over there. Okay, so that's roughly distributed evenly. Now you want to have some liquid in there because otherwise your meat is going to dry out. And so you can just take, if you don't have any liquid left in your pot to distribute amongst the pies, you can just take a little bit of water and just add that to your pies. So you basically want it that if you press down that you can see the liquid coming out through so that the meat is about almost submerged. So you see how I'm pressing down and you can see that if I press down I can see a little bit of the liquid, so this one might maybe a little bit more. That looks good. Now you're just going to put your toppers on, and look how pretty that is. Just to put that in there like that. Okay, so we're ready to put them in the oven. Okay, so the pies are out of the oven and I just have them cooling on this cooling rack, and as you can see they are just gorgeous. Now I didn't worry too much about making the tops really brown, keeping it in longer till they're a golden brown, because I am going to reheat these on Christmas Eve, and so I'll get that nice golden color when I go to reheat them. Okay, one more thing. I took all the scraps from rolling out the pie crust and I mashed them into a dough ball, and then I wrapped that in some wax paper, and I'll toss that in the freezer along with the other dough balls that I froze. And so don't throw out your scraps. You can use that at a later date for another meat pie or a fruit pie. And so I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and I hope if you are enjoying the videos that you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if you haven't already gone to Cansanity.com, the website, then please go there and check out all the great recipes. There are over 160 recipes on the website for you to look at, and a lot of Christmas related baking and cookies and stuff as well. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Have a great day.